Okay, we're gonna do a 30-day challenge. 30 days, 30 rendered. Some of these scenes are already done. Just haven't rendered them until the point of the date that I posted them. Just wanted to be open about that. Now let's get into it. Day 1. I made a monkey destroying the woods by hitting it. I used the RDBD Labs add-on for the destruction and smoke in this one. This one was made to test out the add-on. So, first I make the grids using a basic plane, and I shape out like a basic grids. Then I add some depth to it. Then I thought about just making the middle part of the grids break off, but I didn't really like the way that looked, so I decided to make my whole grids fall apart from the monkey's weight instead. After I got a look how it looked in the test, I decided to change it. So I went back and to the old woods, I added the physics to that instead, and I added the monkey, made it weigh a lot of weight, be a fat boy. I fooled around with the settings for quite a while to get the right results, so it took a while. You could say it had quite an impact. And I waited, and I waited, and then it was done. Then I added the smoke, the particles, and the debris. And yeah. We're gonna skip the footage for that because this is already too long. Move on, a little fun render for the first day. Day 2. I was trying to make rain with the Fitwoods add-on, so I set up a quick rain test. I added a Zaku to Red Comet and placed him in the middle of the scene. I keyframed the Zaku to move a bit, to look around the environment a bit. And I added a peace symbol in the background, which will be a red light, which will illuminate the Zaku. I think this one could use more work. I don't really like this one either. Plus I put more time in getting the water simulation right. Day 3 is a work in progress of Big Mom set from One Piece. This one took a lot longer than I thought to make, to be honest. There's a lot of details on this scene. Overall, I'll text this sometime later, but this is an unfinished version of it for now. I'll also add more detail. So on to the next day. Day 4. We're going marry in some water. I made this one with a Fitwoods add-on, and I made a cube, which will be the wave shape. I also have a full time-lapse of this that is on the channel already. How I made the boat and the waves, even though the boat was made before I did this 30-day challenge, so. A cube, which will be the wave shape. That will move the boat around and push it back and forward. I use some test bakes to get a look at how the water will flow. After I have a few keyframes down, I went through and fixed the animation a bit, so with it following the right way I wanted it to. Then I went through and set up the final simulation by adding white water and turning up the resolution, which can take a while for the bake. Make the background black, and add the white water particles and set them to the correct materials and size. I'll fool around with the light in a bit, get something I like this, then I do the final render and render it out. Day 5. I made a Rick Dom soon, something that you cannot see. I made the smoke with matte to throw, which is the default Blender's smoke engine. For the trees and grass, I used the Baltia library of assets for the trees and grass. I keyframed the big robot to suit the rocket launcher by animating it. I went to visibly keyframing it to move. The snow was done with real snow, which is just a Blender default add-on, which you just press a button and it will add the snow in. For this one, the hardest part was the cloth because it was a pain in the ass to get it to actually not creep through the model. Other than that, this one was pretty easy to make. After I'm done the basic layout of the scene, I move on to making the smoke using matte to throw. I set up some objects and I paired them to the bazooka. I went through and fixed some of the keyframes I had on the animation and added some new ones. I used a sphere, a circle, those where the bazooka will go, the fire and smoke. I set it so the smoke will go forward a bit from the force of the bazooka, right? Day 6. More monkey destruction, which is good fun. This one was also made with the same add-on, the RBB Labs add-on. I wanted to try to make it look like it's destroying wood, but I did add a wood texture to it. Because later on, I want to do more destruction with this add-on. Overall, this one was just good fun to make. I didn't take any footage of me making this one, sadly. So I just have the render here. Okay, day 7. The going melee going around the One Piece map. Or the Grand Line. This one was a bit of a pain in the ass, not gonna lie. To find the right setting to get the water to just stick to the globe and the force field. I added a sphere in, I added a curve to go around the sphere. Then I'm gonna add a curve modifier to the control for the boat, where the boat goes around the circle. Once I'm done setting up the curve modifier, getting it working properly, I decided to duplicate the sphere. I set that one to a force field. Then we're gonna add another one. This one will be fluid. The fluid one would be a bit smaller than the force field. Then I adjusted the keyframes of the boat a bit, and I tried to find the right size for the boat too. Then I mucked around with the sock composition for a bit and the camera. Then I added a giant cube, which will be the domain for the liquid. Then begin the testing, to see if I can find the right settings for the water to stick to the planet. Or the sphere, in this case. So the pain begins. Mucking, changing settings, the force field, the strength. For the globe, I found myself a cool map from Sketchfab, which saves me a lot of time from having to model the map out myself. I went through and separated pieces of the map out. That way I can control the height of it individually, which took a while, but this will make it easier when I need to set up the rocks and grass. And I also remeshed it with Blender's remesh tool. Then I set it to be a collision object, that way the water can interact with it. Then I deleted the other part of the map, because we're not going to need that. We're going to use the sphere we already have in the scene. I mucked with the speed of the curve and how fast the boat will move. And I also mucked with the camera again, get the thought composition right. I paired the camera to the boat, that way it moves when the boat moves, in the curve. I tried some different camera settings, but ultimately ended up going back to the beginning with it really. Then I messed with the lighting a fair bit. And also since the sun moves, that way we have change in lighting so it's not completely consistent. Then I went through and added the grass, which I did by just adding the vertice group. And I added the grass with the Boitier add-on. And I set the vertice groups in for the density to be on the vertice group we made, which makes sure the grass is only on the inner land. I went through and added the similar thing for the outskirts for rocks instead. That way I didn't have to go by hand and add rocks to every coastline. And also managed to cross Splendor, because why not? I did go through and add some rocks by hand, in some spots though. Then I went through and added a collisions into the boat. That way the water will collide with the boat after I got the settings right for the planet. That way the water sticks to the planet, right? Added some more rocks to it by hand when I wanted them. Mucked with the settings a bit more in the Foods add-on. I also didn't make the domain big enough, so I needed to increase the size of it, because it was colliding with the domain, which didn't look very nice. Once I had some of the simulation done, I went through and adjusted some of the keyframes in the boat to kind of make it look a little bit more polished with the way it moved. Then I added the black background for it, and I mucked with the lighting of it a bit more. And the thought cup and the white water. I also changed the lighting a little bit, because I'm picky. Then I add the cloth simulation to the sails and flags to add a bit of life to it, where the boat moves. Changed the lighting settings on this one last time. Now I set up the final render. I rendered it. I think this one turned out pretty great. Took a long time to make though, sadly. A is Big Mom Sip textured. Day 9. The RB79 ball suits at something. I add a wood outline to the little diorama. Then I add some trees and rocks to add a bit more details. And some grass. Then I'll add a explosion where the ball is shooting with some smoke. with the Matza foe. Okay, day 10. The whirlpool with a goof trying to help someone get into a helicopter. For the whirlpool, I have an independent video where I talk a bit more how to make them. But I'll put a link in the description if you want to check that out. For the helicopter, I found a nice model from Sketchfab with some Call of Duty, I believe. I added some spin into it to make the helicopter spin with the blades. And I animated the door to move. Then I went through and keyframed the helicopter's movement in by keyframing the location where it goes in with 2 empties. Because I would tune it a bit more with a second empty if I wanted to do just the movement a bit more. The robot's going to reach up with his hand with a dude in it, that way the dude can jump into the helicopter is the idea. For the robot, I planned out the animation after I got the whirlpool going. I added some pieces to the bottom of it so the water has something to hit, which I'll separate from the model. That way it's a bit more low poly, which makes it easier for footage to work with no issues. I'll plan out the hand so it moves up and lines up with the helicopter. Then I add a dude in, which I got from Sketchfab again. This dude I'm going to grab an animation from Maximo or Miximo of him jumping. I'll plan out the hand so it moves up and lines up with the helicopter after I set up the helicopter's keyframes. Tune the animation some more. Then I add the dude to the hand. I also add a dude onto the chopper too. The rescue dude. Then I adjusted the helicopter animation some more. I did this all when I was baking the simulation. Tune the lighting. Overall, I like how this one turned out pretty well. Okay, day 11. The RX-93 new Gundam fights the Cubely in a city. This render was made to test out the PC's little crowd add-on. Because I reused some old animations I had for these 2 robots for them landing. Because I made for my own animations earlier. I make the people run from the Cubely because the Cubely's invading the city. A new Gundam shows up to fight it. and then we cut. Overall, I like the way this one turned out pretty well. Okay, day 12. Big Mom sip in a bottle in a rocky landscape. I use Beyond TA library for the rocks. For the rock landscape, I just use the rock texture with normal maps to kind of get that right. After I added the rocks and add a bit more detail. For the bottle, I use the Shader Plus add-on for the grass texture, which gives it more of a real look. And I made the bottle with a cube that I shaped to be a bottle-like shape. I made the water by copying the lower half of the bottle. Then, I did some tests with the water simulation to get the water to stay in the bottle the right way. I made so it kind of rocked about a bit, that way you can move the boat. I will add the boat into the bottle and make it kind of follow the flow of the water in the test bake. Did some quick test bakes. Then I paired the empty of the boat, follow the flow of the water to kind of get it to line up a bit. I added some little details in the bottle to make it a bit more fleshed out. Lit the scene by using the Blender Sky texture, which I do love that. Overall, this one wasn't too bad to make. Took a fair bit of time though, for the boat. I like it. The gun cannon fights the goat. Day 13. First, I start by keyframing the goat to move. Went through a keyframe each piece by hand. I keyframe it to do a run cycle, which I will later turn into slow motion by scaling up the scale of the animation to slow it down. I also animated the suit. I used the empty dots, they move it though. Then I went to keyframe the gun turret, the suit. I animated it to rock back when it suits after. Then I went through and added the explosions into the guns when they fired on the gun turret. Which I just use a spear here in a circle where the guns are. I place that around where every turret fires on it. Then I set up the domain for it. This was already set up, but anyway. Then I decided to make the other robot suit too. I made sure to set it so they shoot in slow motion. I tuned the light in a bit, and the sky texture settings again. Then I went through and fixed the animation a bit on both of the robots. I adjusted it some more. Overall, I like the way this one turned out, even if it's a bit rough around the edges. Okay, day 14, waterfall. I do not like the way this one turned out. However, I still made it. And I added some pipes where the water will fall from, which I used cylinders to make. And then I lit them with some basic textures. I used the sky environment texture for the lighting. Day 15, the robot castle in the sky. Overall, I like the way this model looks right now. This is just a work in progress. I did a turnaround of it. I add the textures to it over the week. And I'll also deal with rigging it too. This should be fun. On to the next day. Day 16, tank suiting up something. I took an old animation I had done. I wanted to add the tank suiting. So I added some grass from the library of assets I have. Then some rocks to add a bit more detail to it. Then I set up a quick smoke simulation to add some nice detail with the smoke and fire. I set up some planes around where the tank's body is to make smoke come off when it suits. I add the animation a little bit, just a teeny bit, but for the most part it's the same old animation. I like the theme with sky texture. Change the lighting a bit. Overall, I like how this one turned out. Could be a bit better, but Day 17. This is where I test out the robot rig. I set up a cool rig for this guy. The arms move and the whole body moves. However, I did forget how to do a proper haiku rig on the feet, so it took me a lot longer than it should have. Overall, I like the way this one turned out though. Okay, day 18, water sword. I have a YouTube video about how I made this one to see the full process. How I made it. Here's a quick overview, however. How I made it. I modeled the sword blade from using a plane. It's kind of modeled out. Then I went on to make the handle with where the water will come from. Then I set up the domain object. I set the sword blade to be a force field. Then I set up two empty in the fluid settings. I set the mode to volume force, which make the water follow the shape of the blade, rotate, and everything will be parented to. The other one will be parented to the other empty. time to set the info object where the water will flow from. It'll be a save. I'm going to place the info object right where the handle meets the blade. That way it looks like the water is coming from the handle. Then I do some test banks to see if the setting's right on the force field, and on the world scale, and on the gravity. Takes a few tries, but I find the right settings for the domain and force field. Then I do some more test banks to see if it all looks alright in the new location. Then I like the theme with a sky texture in the environments in. Try to get the lighting right here like that, yeah. I add some details for the handle. And I like the way this one turned out overall. Day 19, Pool Room, Level 9. I made this one by taking an old scene and moving some of the objects around. Some of the shapes of them. Then, I add some holes in the scene and the floor where the info objects will have to be placed. This is where the water will come from. Then I set it so the gravity will go up instead of down, so I set it to 9.8 in the foot fluids settings in the domain. Then I keyframe the gravity in the X rotation to go from 0 to minus 42. This will make the water go sideways towards the wall, as you see here. I thought this one was a pretty cool idea. Could have been a bit better though. The whole idea of liminal spaces and all. Okay, day 20, Swordfists in the Sky. The sip is some Cowboy Bebop. I took an old scene and remixed it a bit. I stopped the sip from moving, instead I'm moving the crowns. I set the keyframe on those to be linear, that way they move at a constant speed. Then I add a bit more motion to the sip by making the sip move sideways a bit and rotate. I made the camera a fisheye lens to add the feelings attached to the sip. For the engine on the sip, I use a shape key animation on the cylinder here This is set to missing with a gradient on it. And I also have a 2D animation in the image slot, in the emission. To add a bit more to it. And I used the sky texture in the environment slot. I think this one came up pretty good. It was a pain in the ass to render out the clouds, so. Day 21. The gun tank firing dramatically. I set the camera to be orthographic, and I set up the camera angle for it too. I added some grass and trees to this old scene I made a while ago. I set up the lighting, and I set where the sun was going to come from. I'm using the sky texture. I animated the gun tank to move, and set the camera to follow it. I set up the domain for the smoke simulation. Then I went through and added info objects where the smoke will come in, and the fire for the explosion when the guns fire. Went through and added them for all the guns on this gun tank. Which is just a sphere and a circle behind the sphere. The circle is bigger than the sphere though. And then I keyframe the flow so it only comes out in certain frames. That way we don't have smoke and fire everywhere on every frame. In the info objects, I added initial velocity and set the initial x to 15 and set the z to 1.4. That way it goes up and it goes forward, so it looks like it's firing. Then I did some test bakes, then I decided to move the tank back when it fired. Overall, I like the way this one came out. On to the next one. Big Mom sipping some waves. I made a domain. This is just a rectangle. Then I went through and added another rectangle. Add some loop cuts to it, change the shape to look a bit more angular, like a ramp. Set that to be the fluid. And I did a quick water simulation of that to see how it moved. Once I got it to move like waves going back and forth a little bit, I added Big Mom's sip, which then I'm going to set to. So then I'm going to animate it to move, following the flow of the water. And then I'll add a collision object to it. That way the sip reacts to the water. Now I set up the settings for the simulation. I press bake. Then I do the quaff for the sails. I add a force field to the wind, blow the sails around, and that's about it for this one. This one's just kind of okay. On to the next one. Day 22, my CPU has died. This is a pain. I cannot use my computer. Oh, well, I have some old renders I got done, so in the same time frame of the 30 days, so I'll be posting one of those instead. What's this one here? Took me a while to figure out what's the CPU though. Let's see if it was Windows, the hard drive. Turned out to be the CPU though. Oh, I think this water simulation I did turn out great, so. The silver lining, I guess. Thousand sunny going around the globe. So I took the old planet animation I have for the going melee. Now add the 1000 Sunny into it instead, and make it follow the same curved path. However, I'm going to rotate the planet over. That way the boat's on the opposite side. I'm also going to do some quick simulations to get the results. I'm also going to mess with the lighting a bit, make it look a bit different. After some test simulations, I had something like this. It looks horrible, I know. We'll fix it later. Did some more test simulations. It's still not looking quite right. Still horrible. Gonna change the settings a bit. So time to go reset this and do it all over again. Went through and changed some of the settings here. I decided to went through and add the collision to the boat now. Went through every object and add obstacle to it. Set to export animated mess. That way I get some idea how the water will interact with it. A few hours later I had something like this. I made the domain too small, so I need to increase the size of it on the top. The water is hitting the top. Now I might have to mess with the gravity a bit more too, because it does look a bit funny. So I went through and changed some more settings. A few hours later I had something like this, looking much better. I think these are the final settings of the simulation. I'm just gonna go through and add some cost simulations to the sails. And that's basically done, I think, after I adjust the lighting one more time, and the white water particle size. Overall, I think this one came out great. Probably one of the best renders I did this challenge. I wanted to see if I could make a robot destroy the building by dropping down. Make a cool little shot like this. So first I make the building. Let's I start off by making a corner of it first. And then I mirror it, all sides. Put a solidify modifier on it. Then I do an array. Where we array it up to each level. I add some beams in the middle, add a bit more detail. And I add a floor that's separate from the walls. Then I add the robot into the scene. I plan out the animation with him, the keyframes roughly. I also do some destruction tests for just building. Next day, the marine ship getting destroyed from some cannonballs. So I set this up very quickly. I set up some cannonballs going to the ship. I wanted to make this to see if I could do it or not. I did record footage of this one sadly, so just hear my rambling and my great voice. Okay, pool room. Another one of these pool rooms. This time we use a marble tile on the walls instead of the usual pool tile one. Make it a bit different. Water comes from the stairway in the back where the emitter is. So first I make the layout. I added a hole in the middle where the water will fall down and leave the floor. Then I make some stairs. I add some pillars. I make a wall. I try out some different lighting setups for the sky texture. I fool around with the layout too in the building. I add the domain into the scene. It's a giant cube or rectangle prism. Now I do some quick simulations. I add some tile textures to the walls. I fool around with the camera a bit more. I fool around with the layout too of where the walls go with the light. Decided to change it all again. I also have an outflow out of the hole that way the water doesn't build up there and take up space in the domain storage. Overall, this one came out okay, not the best. Okay, the vacuum suit. This is a very simple scene. Just made a little city outline, this little diorama piece like a board game. Added a domino sign to the building, add a bit more detail. Add some bullets by the feet. I added a road that he stands on. Then I went through a smoke simulation of him shooting with some fire, and that's about it. I didn't record any footage making this one either, sadly, so on to the next one! I have a waterfall in ancient ruins, old temple with some trees. The water just kind of fills up in the sea in this little diorama piece. This one I mainly use pre-made assets and just kind of drag them along the scene. I added a texture to the floor. I added the pillars and trees in. Added some grass. Add info object on the building, or the water will fall from the building. Add some objects supposed to be the collision objects, that way the water interacts with them. Played around with the light in a bit. I also made it so there's always a little bit of water in the scene before the waterfall falls down. Overall, this one turned out somewhat okay. Not the best. One million water cube, a little cool scene. So first I made a cube. I set the camera angle up. Then I added the going melee. I duplicated the cube, made it a bit larger, and made that the fluid. I added another one for the force field. I made the cube in the middle be an obstacle. I also beveled the cubes too. Then I went through and made a curve into a more of a square-like shape. That way the ship can rotate around. I add the curve modifier to it. I rotated the ship to line up with the curve modifier. I got that set up. I set up how many keyframes I wanted it to be. Took a while to get this set up, fooling around with the settings a bit. I adjusted the camera angle again to find a better spot. This I decided here. Then I added a collision to it, to the bottom of the boat. So make sure we have collision with the water. Then I set up a domain object. Did some test bake. These take a while usually. Okay looking water cube here. Need to tune the light in a bit. Like I need to tune the settings a bit more here with the gravity. I went through and added some keyframes to the boat to be able to adjust the way it goes up and down on the cube's edges. But I thought it looked a bit rust before. So I went through and polished it a bit more. I also made the domain on the bottom a bit bigger. I added some lovely clouds to the backdrop for this one. I think it looks great. Look at a keyframe in the move. I'll keyframe. From there we just render it. Could definitely use a bit more polishing on the water simulation, but it still looks pretty good. Overall, this render challenge has its own difficulties. Between the fact my CPU died, the fact that Amazon kept canceling my order for ordering a new one. Also got sick with the flu at the end of it, so that was fun. In between finding time to make stuff. However, it was still fun overall. And thank you for watching. Stay safe.